Welcome to Beneath the Surface, the dark side of crime, where we uncover the most shocking and unforgettable true crime stories. In today's episode, we explore a chilling case that began with a simple argument but escalated into a deadly confrontation. Join us as we dive deep into the events that led to a senseless murder, unravel the shocking twists, and ask the question, what drove someone to commit such a heinous act? Stay tuned till the end for the shocking truth. Chapter 1. The Calm. Before the storm westward, a picturesque town set against rolling hills and cobblestone streets was a place that had always embraced peace. The kind of town where neighbors waved as they passed by, and the air always smelled faintly of fresh-cut grass. Life here was simple, uneventful, and calm. But sometimes beneath the surface of quiet towns like Westford, tension simmered. Jason Thompson was a man of routine. A 32-year-old mechanic, he lived a life defined by precision, grease under his nails, and hours spent in the quiet of his garage. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest work. Jason had always been surrounded by friends, but there was one person who had become his closest ally, his partner in everything. Aaron Lewis, at 29, had been Jason's best friend since they were kids. Their shared passion for cars and tinkering had kept them close throughout the years. But something had shifted. Over the past few months, Aaron had been distant. He had started skipping out on their projects, arriving late, or worse, not showing up at all. Jason, ever the reliable one, carried the burden of their shared work on his shoulders. As the summer months rolled on, Jason felt frustration build within him. It was as if the friendship he had nurtured with Aaron was slowly crumbling away, piece by piece. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the warm light of early evening filled the air, Jason extended the olive branch. He invited Aaron out for a drink at the Driftwood Tavern, the only bar in town. It wasn't just for fun. Jason had questions. He needed answers. And he wasn't going to let the growing tension between them slide anymore. When Aaron showed up, late as usual, Jason's patience was already wearing thin. He had a lot on his mind, and his tone was sharp. "We need to talk," Jason said bluntly as Aaron took a seat beside him at the bar. The moment Aaron sat down, Jason could tell something was off. Aaron wasn't his usual self. There was an unease in his eyes, a distance Jason couldn't ignore. But this time, Jason wasn't backing down. The conversation started slow, with Jason trying to ease into it. He started by talking about their latest project, the Mustang they had been working on for months. "We're behind, Aaron. We need to finish this or it's going to cost us both. You've been slacking, and I'm getting tired of carrying the load alone," Jason said, trying to keep his voice calm, but there was an edge to it. Aaron didn't meet his gaze immediately, and when he did, his eyes were cold. "I know. I've had a lot on my plate. I'll get to it." But Jason wasn't buying it. This wasn't just about the project. This was bigger than that. Chapter 2. The Trigger. Jason's words hung in the air, the silence growing between them like a storm cloud ready to burst. Aaron took another sip of his beer, his hand shaking slightly as he set the glass down on the bar. "What's the problem, Jason?" he asked, his voice unusually quiet. "You've been on my case for weeks now. Just let it go." But Jason couldn't let it go. This wasn't just about missing time on a project. This was about the emotional distance that had grown between them over the past few months. The rift that Aaron had caused without even acknowledging it. Jason's frustration spilled over. "Let it go. You're my best friend, Aaron. You're the guy I've worked with, the guy who's been there for me. And now it feels like I'm the only one trying to make this work." Aaron's lips tightened into a thin line, and his voice dropped lower. "Maybe I'm just tired of it all, Jason. Maybe I don't need to be your damn sidekick anymore. Maybe I need to do something for myself." Jason's brows furrowed. What the hell is that supposed to mean? His voice rose, a flash of anger making his words sharper than he intended. "This isn't about being a sidekick. It's about being there for each other." Aaron slammed his fist down on the bar, the sound cutting through the growing tension like a whip. You think I need you? You think I can't do anything without you? His eyes were wild, his face flushed with anger. You've always treated me like I'm the one who can't handle things, but maybe you're the one who needs to wake up. Jason's heart raced as he stood up, his breath quickening with the heat of the moment. You've been avoiding me, Aaron. This whole thing has been building for months, and you know it, Jason said, his voice louder now, pushing the argument forward, each word stoking the flames. But Aaron wasn't having it. You don't get it, do you? I'm not some damn puppet you can control. I've been trying to figure things out, but all you do is criticize me. Always. The words hit Jason harder than he expected. There was pain behind Aaron's anger, and for a moment Jason saw the vulnerability he had never noticed before. But the moment was fleeting. Aaron's next words came out like venom. Maybe you should take a good look at yourself before you start pointing fingers. Jason's anger flared. Maybe I should have done that a long time ago, he shot back, his voice rising even further. But this is about more than just a project. This is about you not giving a damn anymore. It was the trigger. Jason didn't know it yet, but what had begun as a simple conversation would soon spiral out of control. Chapter 3. Escalating Violence. The argument, once restrained within the walls of the tavern, now spilled out into the open air of the parking lot. The dim glow of the streetlights cast long shadows as the two men faced each other in the cool night. The sounds of the bar, muffled by distance, seemed like a distant memory. This was no longer a simple disagreement. It was a battle of pride, of two men who had once been like brothers, now locked in a war of words. Come on, Aaron, Jason said, his voice tight with frustration. What happened to us? We've been through so much together. This isn't us. Aaron stood still, fists clenched at his sides. His breathing was shallow, his chest rising and falling rapidly. Maybe I'm tired of you always being right, Jason. Maybe I'm tired of you being the one who always has it all figured out while I'm just stuck in your shadow. Jason was taken aback. What are you talking about? I've never treated you like that. Aaron laughed bitterly, a hollow sound. That's exactly it. You don't even see it, do you? I've always been there for you, but all I've ever been is your second choice, your backup. His eyes were wild now, filled with an intensity that Jason hadn't seen in him before. Well, I'm done. Jason took a step back, unsure how to react to the storm that was Aaron. I didn't know you felt this way. Well, you never bothered to ask, Aaron screamed, stepping forward with such force that Jason instinctively backed up. You always assumed everything was fine, that I'd just keep being your damn partner. But I'm done, Jason. I'm done pretending. Jason's mind raced. He didn't know how they had gotten here. What had started as a conversation about work had now become a full-blown confrontation. His heart pounded in his chest as he struggled to find the right words. Aaron, please, let's just calm down. Jason started, but before he could finish, Aaron's anger took over. Jason barely had time to react when Aaron lunged at him. It happened so quickly. One moment they were talking, the next, Aaron's hands were around Jason's collar, shoving him backward with surprising strength. Jason stumbled, falling against the hood of a car parked nearby, the impact knocking the wind out of him. What the hell, Aaron? Jason gasped, his voice cracking with shock and fear. He hadn't expected this. They had fought before, sure, but this wasn't like those times. This was something else. This was rage. Real, unfiltered anger. Aaron, his face twisted in fury, pushed him again, this time with such force that Jason could feel the heat of Aaron's breath on his face. You never listen, Jason, Aaron shouted, his voice breaking. You think you know everything, but you don't. You don't know what it's like to feel like a damn failure. Jason's head was spinning. The anger he felt towards Aaron in that moment was mixed with something else, something akin to pity. He could see the hurt in Aaron's eyes, the bitterness, but it was quickly overshadowed by the overwhelming sense of violence that seemed to possess him. Jason tried to speak, to reason with his friend, but every word felt like it was swallowed by the growing chaos. Aaron wasn't listening. His fists were clenched so tightly his knuckles turned white, and Jason could see the veins bulging in his neck. The situation had spiraled out of control so quickly that Jason barely had time to think. He just knew he needed to get away, to stop this before things got worse. "Aaron, calm down," Jason said, holding his hands out in a defensive gesture. "You don't want to do this. Let's talk this out. Just take a step back." But Aaron wasn't hearing him. He stepped forward again, his eyes filled with rage, and Jason, for the first time, saw the man in front of him as a stranger capable of violence he had never imagined. His friend had snapped, and there was nothing Jason could do to stop it. The next moment felt like it happened in slow motion. Aaron's hand, shaking with adrenaline, reached inside his jacket pocket. Jason's eyes locked onto the flash of steel, an object, a knife. The reality hit him in an instant. "Aaron, no!" Jason shouted, his heart pounding in his chest. But it was too late. With a swift, almost reflexive motion, Aaron thrust the blade forward, the sharp edge catching the moonlight before sinking into Jason's side. Chapter 4. The Fatal Blow. Jason felt the pain in an instant. It wasn't just the searing sensation of the wound itself. It was the shock, the disbelief that something so brutal was happening to him. His best friend, his partner, the person he had known his entire life, was the one responsible for his pain. The weight of that realization hit Jason like a hammer. He staggered back, clutching his side, the blood oozing from the gash. He tried to catch his breath, but it felt like his lungs were constricting. His knees wobbled, and the world spun around him as he gasped for air, trying to process what had just happened. What the hell, Aaron?" Jason wheezed, his voice barely a whisper. The shock was starting to set in, and, with it, a sinking feeling in his gut that told him this was not something he would survive. Aaron stood frozen, his hand still gripping the knife, his expression one of disbelief. He stared at the blade as if he couldn't comprehend what he had just done. The horror in his eyes mirrored Jason's own. I didn't mean to," Aaron stammered, his voice shaking. "I didn't mean to. I didn't." But his words didn't make sense. Nothing made sense anymore. Jason's vision blurred as his knees buckled and he collapsed to the ground with a sickening thud. His body felt heavy, and the blood continued to pour from the wound, staining the gravel beneath him. The last thing Jason saw was Aaron standing above him, his face pale and twisted with regret. But it was too late for regrets, too late for apologies, too late for anything. Jason's body went limp, the world fading away into darkness. Aaron dropped the knife. His body shook as he fell to his knees beside Jason, the gravity of the situation finally hitting him. He had killed his best friend, the one person who had always been there for him. And now, nothing would ever be the same. Chapter 5. The aftermath. The silence that followed was deafening. Aaron sat there, the blood on his hands the only sound in the otherwise still parking lot. His breath came in ragged gasps as he stared down at Jason's motionless body. The weight of what he had done settled heavily on his chest, squeezing the air from his lungs. He couldn't think. He couldn't process. His mind was a blur, and his hands were shaking uncontrollably. What had started as a simple disagreement had turned into something unfathomable. The arguments, the frustrations, the hurt, it had all led to this moment. Jason was dead, and Aaron had killed him. His eyes flickered to the knife on the ground, then back to Jason, his friend. No, his brother, who was now lifeless at his feet. He had done this. The realization washed over him like a cold wave, drowning him in guilt and disbelief. For a long time, Aaron couldn't move. He just stared, numb, as the blood continued to pool around Jason's body. But then panic set in. He had to leave. He had to run. He couldn't face the consequences of what he had done. Without thinking, Aaron bolted, stumbling into the dark night away from the scene of his crime. He ran and ran, not knowing where he was going, only knowing that he had to get away. Chapter 6. The police arrive. By the time the police arrived, the town of Westford had been changed forever. It was a typical small-town evening, the kind where everyone knows everyone's business. So when the news of Jason's murder spread, it was like the air had been sucked out of the town. The disbelief, the shock, it was all consuming. Officer Claire Monroe, a lifelong resident of Westford, was the first on the scene. She had known both Aaron and Jason for years. To her, they weren't just suspects or victims. They were friends, people she had seen grow up. But when she arrived at the parking lot of the Driftwood, the sight that greeted her was something she could never have prepared for. Jason's body lay crumpled on the ground, the blood still fresh and pooling around him. Claire's heart sank as she recognized the man she had known for so long. She bent down, checking for a pulse, but there was nothing. Jason Thompson was dead, and somewhere out there, Aaron was hiding, alone with his guilt. Chapter 7. The Manhunt. The news of the murder spread like wildfire. Westford was not used to this kind of violence, and the community was rocked to its core. A manhunt was quickly organized. Police combed the town, the woods, and even the nearby hills, searching for Aaron Lewis. But he had vanished, leaving behind nothing but confusion and fear. The town was divided. Some people defended Aaron, saying it was an accident, a mistake made in the heat of the moment. Others were horrified, unable to understand how a simple argument could escalate to murder. The town's peaceful existence had been shattered, and now everyone was left to pick up the pieces. Chapter 8. The Confession. Nearly a week had passed before Aaron finally turned himself in. He walked into the police station, his face gaunt and pale, his eyes hollow from lack of sleep. His movements were slow, almost mechanical, as he approached the counter and asked to speak to Officer Monroe. "I did it," Aaron said quietly when he was led into the interrogation room. His voice was barely a whisper, but the words sent a chill down Claire's spine. She had known Aaron his whole life, but this was a different man. The man sitting before her now was broken, hollowed out by guilt. "I didn't mean to," Aaron repeated, his voice cracking. "It just happened. I didn't think. I didn't—" His words faltered as the full weight of what he had done hit him once again. Claire didn't know what to say. She sat across from him, stunned by the pain in his eyes. "Aaron, you have to understand. What you've done is irreversible. Jason's gone." The room was silent except for Aaron's shallow breathing. Finally, he spoke again, his voice filled with self-loathing. "I didn't know how it got this far. We were just arguing, and then—" He trailed off, his face burying in his hands as he began to sob quietly. Chapter 9. The trial. The trial of Aaron Lewis was the most talked-about event in Westford's history. For the first time in decades, the town was thrust into the harsh reality of the criminal justice system, and the courtroom was packed with people desperate for answers. The once quiet and peaceful town was now at the center of a media frenzy. The case had been covered by local and even national news outlets, adding a layer of pressure to an already tense situation. Jason's family was devastated. His mother, Ruth Thompson, was inconsolable. She had raised Jason as a single mother, pouring everything into him, and now her world had been ripped apart. Her anger and grief were palpable as she sat in the front row of the courtroom, staring daggers at Aaron as he entered. Jason's father, who had been estranged from Jason for many years, also showed up to the trial, his face filled with regret for the time he had lost with his son. Aaron, on the other hand, looked like a shell of the man he once was. His once muscular frame was now thin, and the weight of his guilt was written all over his face. His eyes were hollow, and his expression was one of complete remorse. The court was packed, and the air was thick with emotion as the prosecution and defense prepared to make their cases. The prosecution's case was straightforward. They painted a picture of a man who, in a fit of rage, killed his best friend. They argued that Aaron's actions were premeditated, even if only for a moment, and that his anger had been building for months. They pointed to the fact that Aaron had been carrying the knife with him that night, suggesting that it wasn't just a spur-of-the-moment decision, but one that had been prepared for. Aaron's defense team, however, argued that it was an act of passion, a momentary lapse in judgment. They claimed that Aaron had not intended to kill Jason and that the death had been a tragic accident. They played up the long-standing friendship between the two men, arguing that the bond between them was too strong for Aaron to have ever intentionally harmed Jason. They emphasized Aaron's remorse, his decision to turn himself in, and his deep regret. Throughout the trial, Aaron sat motionless, staring at the floor. His lawyer's words were a blur as he tried to focus on the consequences of his actions. His mind often wandered back to that night in the parking lot, replaying the moment over and over again. The argument, the shove, the knife, and the horrifying realization that it was too late to undo his mistake. When the prosecution rested, the defense called a few witnesses to testify on Aaron's behalf. They described him as a good man, a hard-working individual who had never shown violent tendencies. They spoke of the pressures Aaron had been under, including issues with his family and his strained relationship with Jason. The defense argued that it wasn't in Aaron's nature to kill and that the tragedy was the result of a perfect storm of emotions. But no matter how the defense framed it, the truth remained. Jason Thompson was dead, and Aaron Lewis was the one who had ended his life. Chapter 10. The Verdict. The jury deliberated for what felt like an eternity. The tension in the courtroom was unbearable, with every eye fixed on the door, waiting for the verdict that would shape the lives of so many people. Jason's family sat in silence, their hands clasped tightly together, each of them hoping for justice. On the other side, Aaron's family sat with their heads bowed, unsure of what to expect. The judge entered the courtroom, and the room fell silent. Aaron, his face pale, sat with his hands clasped tightly in his lap. His heart pounded in his chest as he awaited the judgment that would determine his fate. "Will the jury please rise?" the judge said. The jury foreman stood and read the verdict. "We, the jury, find the defendant, Aaron Lewis, guilty of manslaughter." A collective gasp echoed through the courtroom, and Aaron's face dropped. He had been convicted, but not of murder. The charge of manslaughter meant that the jury believed the killing had been unintentional, a tragic mistake rather than a premeditated act. It wasn't the sentence Jason's family had hoped for, but it was something. It was a step toward closure. Aaron's lawyer immediately began preparing for the sentencing phase, but Aaron sat motionless. He had heard the words, but they felt distant. They didn't matter. The guilt, the regret, it was still overwhelming. He would never be able to undo what he had done. The years he would serve in prison wouldn't bring Jason back. He couldn't bring Jason back. The judge sentenced Aaron to 15 years in prison for manslaughter, acknowledging the remorse Aaron had shown and his decision to turn himself in. But the judge also made it clear that while Aaron's actions had been born of anger and frustration, the consequences of his actions could not be ignored. Conclusion. As Aaron was escorted out of the courtroom, his mind was consumed with one thought. He had taken a life. No matter the sentence, no matter the years he would spend behind bars, nothing could undo the tragic chain of events that had led to Jason's death. The friendship, the bond they had shared for so many years, was shattered beyond repair. There was no way to bring Jason back. The town of Westford, once a place of simplicity and tranquility, had been irrevocably changed. The murder of Jason Thompson had left scars that would never fade. But there was a lesson to be learned in the tragedy, one that was as old as time itself. Anger, unchecked and unrestrained, can lead to destruction. And once the words are spoken, once the actions are taken, there is no turning back. For Aaron, the trial had ended, but the real punishment had already begun. His life as he knew it was over. He had taken the life of his best friend, and in doing so had destroyed everything that once mattered to him. As the years passed, Westford would eventually heal, but the memory of what had happened, the lessons learned from that fateful night, would remain etched in the hearts of those who had witnessed the destruction of a friendship, a town, and a life. Lessons learned. The power of words and emotions. What began as a simple disagreement between friends escalated into murder because neither party was able to control their emotions. Words spoken in anger can have devastating consequences, and once they are said, there is no taking them back. The consequences of violence. No matter how small the action, violence can never be undone. Aaron's decision to let his anger control him destroyed his future and claimed the life of a man who had once been his closest friend. The importance of communication. The lack of open, honest communication between Jason and Aaron contributed to the escalation of the conflict. If they had communicated their frustrations early on, they might have avoided this tragedy. Thank you for joining us on Beneath the Surface, the Dark Side of Crime. If this story impacted you, share your thoughts in the comments and don't forget to subscribe for more gripping true crime stories.